Andrew Tate bragged that one of his girls was only 15 when he ruined her life. When the cops came to call, Tate blamed the Jews, the all-purpose scapegoat when there's trouble or strife. No matter what happens, some Muslims will choose to blame everyone else instead of admit that to convert to Islam, you must be a half-wit. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's another thrilling episode of This Week in Jihad, and we are here with the great, the one, the only, David Wood. How are you, David?
Yeah, at this point, Robert's just showing off with the poems. He knows I've said in the past that I had always assumed that he was spending like the entire week working on his poem. I'm like, he must be. I'm not joking, guys. I actually thought he's up in his. He keeps like a little pen and paper, and he just sits down jotting down lines, and he's sitting there and he's listening to something. He's like, oh, here's another line and stuff. When for the past couple of weeks, he just whatever tweet I posted right before the show, he makes a poem out of it. And that one, of course, was about Andrew Tate, who he you can watch the clips from videos by like the channels Murdered by Crayons and so on, who share all the Tate clips. But he's got this clip where he's talking about how his pimping system works, how he dupes these girls into doing sex cam work for him. And he's talking about this girl, and he's like, and she's been with me 6 years. Vivian, she's been with me 6 years. Yeah, she's been with me 6 years. And then he says, and so now when I'm recruiting a new girl, I get Vivian to talk to her. He goes, I like her because she's young. She's 21. I was like, wait a minute. She's been working for you for 6 years. And you just said in another part of the video, she's 21. What's that make her when she started? 15. So she was 15 when she got with Tate and started working for Tate. Okay, well now he's got all these other sex trafficking charges. If it's a 15-year-old, then it's a minor. It's sex trafficking of a minor. So police just raided his house to look for corroborating evidence for him trafficking a minor. And as soon as they do it, he blames the Jews. It's because he was criticizing the Zionists. So you'll recall, everyone, last year before October 7th, whenever he was getting new charges over things, it was because the Matrix is coming after him for his bold defense of young men who are being attacked by society. Now, because Israel's the big thing going on on YouTube and Twitter and so on, now it's because I criticized Zionists. That's why I'm being charged or investigated. It's not because I've done all these things and bragged about all these things and there's all the evidence that I did all these things. No, it's because I'm such a good person. That's why. And if Israel isn't the big story next year when he's going to trial, then it'll be something else. It'll be because I criticized Kamala Harris, or it's because I sided with Tommy Robinson in the immigration debate. It'll be something to where he's being targeted specifically for taking a bold stand on some issue. Under no circumstances is it ever going to be because he's the idiot. He's the complete idiot who bragged for years about these things that he didn't know were crimes. He didn't know these things were crimes, right? He thought he was fine. And so I've been to prison. There's lots of guys in there who self-snitched. They fell for the good cop, bad cop tactic, and then they ended up admitting things that they did. No one in history has ever snitched on himself more than Andrew Tate. He's in his own category, But he's blaming the Jews, and that's become a pretty big thing nowadays, Robert.
Yes, it has. And so I did want to highlight this question here. Tony Bobo asks, why do you need to discuss Tate on this channel? Well, strictly speaking, we don't need to discuss anything on this channel. But Tate is a convert to Islam. And so he puts a context to his hatred of Jews and his blaming of the Jews that the other fashionable anti-Semites of nowadays actually don't have, because he's tapping into a very large strain of just this kind of scapegoating that goes back to the Quran's deep hatred of the Jews.
Yeah, and I mean, keep in mind, you've got all these Muslims right now and their allies who are blasting away at Jews for anything. Anything that happens, they blame Jews. And Andrew Tate's doing the exact same thing and using his Muslim followers to blame the Jews for his house getting raided over sex trafficking a minor. This is all connected. This is all connected. And so we'll talk about whatever we want. Hey, Robert. Hey, Robert.
Yes. Yes, David.
Check out my Jihadi Tears mug. Hey,
That's
this is
an
some new
excellent
water I'm
mug.
trying out. Mmm. Water. Did you know that water's H2O? That's right. We can talk about anything we want. It's our show, not yours.
All right, let's talk about Baher Azahrani. There he is. I think that's his name. Let me make sure I got his name right. Bader Azahrani, and he's a guy from Jersey. All right, so he's out over there in New Jersey, and this guy, he goes and he actually steals a school bus.
Oh, who hasn't in New Jersey?
Yeah, exactly. And so
what New Jerseyan hasn't stolen a school bus?
He stole the school bus, and he pled guilty this week to stealing the school bus. But as it turned out, he was discovered because 2 days before he stole the school bus, he broke into an unoccupied residential home that was across the street from the lot where the school bus was. And so this guy, he leaves a notebook in the unoccupied house. And in the notebook, he's got stuff like this. Blood, blood, destruction, destruction, Allah. Jews control everything. F each and every Jewish person. Allah, I am ready for your orders. I want to live the rest of my life to serve you and the religion. So, what do you think, David? There's no telling what he was going to do with the school bus, but I just don't really think he was going to pick up kids and drop them off at school.
Well, I'm just saying, again, what New Jerseyan doesn't have a notebook filled with that stuff? I had a guy from New Jersey over here the other day. Here's his notebook right here. That's all it says. That's all. It's filled with that stuff. That's what they do there. No, but I mean, serious concern because it was a few years ago that what we called vehicular jihad really exploded, and that was just because there are certain places where it was just hard to get guns and so on, especially if you're on some watch list. And a bunch of guys who did bomb plots but didn't want to do the actual work of learning how to build bombs, they kept getting caught because they'd start asking around, hey, do you know where I can get a bomb? Do you know where I can get a bomb? And then an informant would fill in the authorities, and they would give the guy a fake bomb. Anyway, it was something like 12 terrorist attacks in a row in New York, where I lived. All got foiled because some idiot went and started asking around. Eventually, someone realized, hey, why have these? Why focus on getting a bomb when we keep getting caught? When we could just get a truck or something like that and plow it into a parade or something like that. And there's kind of no way to stop it. No, there's no one who can stop you from going and getting in especially if it's just like a car. If you just take your car and just plow into a bunch of people, how do authorities stop or realize that you're going to do this? How could they possibly stop it? Very difficult to do. But there are people who understand that you'll be much more successful if you have a large vehicle. If you have a large vehicle, and so you had that one concert or that parade or whatever in France where the guy plowed a big truck right into him and killed a ton of people, dozens of people.
And at the University of North Carolina also, way back in 2006. What was that guy's name? Mohammad Reza Tahiri Azar, an Iranian, and he rented an SUV, drove it on campus. He wanted to kill as many students as possible. He did hit 9 students, but he didn't kill anybody.
So when you have, it became popular for a brief time where all of a sudden there was just like every time you heard about a terrorist attack, it was someone plowing a truck or a car or something like that into a group of people here or there on a bridge or something like that. Anyway, here's a jihadi, a guy who's obsessed with jihad, and he steals a school bus. What do you think he's doing with that? Going around picking up kids? I mean, given his faith in Muhammad, you'd think, oh, maybe he's going to pick up a lot of kids, but probably not, right? Probably not picking up kids to do anything with them. Probably getting a school bus because that's a helpful vehicle to plow into people.
Indeed. So luckily he was stopped and he has pled guilty. So I'm sure that if he does some time or something in the United States, he's a Saudi national, he will, after that, become a completely upstanding member of the community because, of course, concerted efforts, as you know, David, are made in prisons to disabuse people of jihadist sentiments. And
Yeah, people go to prison and then they find out Islam's a religion of peace and tolerance.
yes, yes, that's it. All right, that was in Jersey, and then we got Utah. Now, this is an interesting story. In Utah, we had this fella, Abdullahi Haroon. Abdullahi Haroon. And if I wish you had tweeted about him because that's a great name to put into a poem. And he is or was a Quran teacher. And he had a 17-year-old girl in his class. Now, David, you know that from an Islamic standpoint, 17 is not is kind of old.
Yeah, that's a grandma for these guys.
Yeah, because Abdullahi Haroon was 34, but the girl was 17, and let's see what happens. He offered to drive her to school, and what happened was he had her sit next. Oh, I'm sorry, drive her home from school, and she trusted him because he was her Quran teacher.
Mm.
And so he's
yeah, always trust your Quran teachers.
That's it, man. Most trustworthy people on the planet. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Hey, girl, let me read you this passage. Surah 65, verse 4. Come on.
that one, ladies and gentlemen, is about divorce rules that you can divorce women under various circumstances, and it specifies that this also applies to women who have not yet menstruated, that is, prepubescent girls that you are presumably marrying and divorcing. So anyway, Abdullahi Haroon had the girl sit next to him, of course, as he drove her home, but instead of taking her directly home, he took her to a store, asked her to get some stuff for him. Then, after they left the store, he began touching her thigh, grabbing her hand, putting his arms around her, and touching her chest. Now, she being a modern girl, she had a phone with her, and so she began filming him because she was afraid of him and felt uncomfortable. And he
Smart.
said, "Relax, I want to make you my second wife." Now, do you think he was divorced and was talking about his second wife, like after the divorce?
Not at all. Not at all. And just so everyone knows, this happens in the U.S., in Canada, in Europe. I actually knew a woman. She's no longer a Muslim, but she converted and became a guy's second wife. And you say, what? Isn't that illegal? It's illegal if you're doing it in front of the state or if the state knows about it. If you're just going and getting your marriage confirmed at the local mosque or by phone even, you can do this by phone. You can say, hey, I'm marrying this girl right now and so on. They do this over the phone. Yeah, you can get second, third, fourth wife. And guess what? Yeah, they don't care. They don't care if she's a minor. They don't care about any of that stuff. And so, yeah, 17, that's actually kind of old by Islamic standards because, I mean, keep in mind, Daniel Hikikachu, he said, hey, if a girl starts showing signs of maturity and she's 4 years old, then she's ready. And so you get in the situation where this 17-year-old girl, she could have a daughter who's like 13 years old, and then the 13-year-old, she has a daughter who's like 9, and the 9-year-old has a daughter who's like 5. And you get in this ridiculous like Russian nesting doll situation, but that's what they love.
In what universe does a 4-year-old girl start showing signs of maturity? What on earth
Well,
is he talking about?
Well, see, everyone assumed he was talking about puberty. I'm not entirely convinced just because when you go to the Muslim sources, when they talked about maturity, being ready for sex, they were only concerned about two things. One, is she so small that you'll crush her if you climb on top of her? So you're just going to crush her. So you want to make sure, and they talk about the girls like being chubby enough to support a man's weight and so on. And then the other thing they're concerned about is making the two holes into one hole. So like tearing her open until her two holes become one hole. That's what they meant by mature. But in his debate, he's saying they're signs of maturity, which IP interpreted as signs of puberty. And that's when, so they went with...
Maybe he meant she could beat him in debate.
Yeah, something like that. But no, there's what's called precocious puberty, where you actually have a medical problem that you start puberty earlier. like significantly earlier than is normal. And so IP was asking Daniel about that. And he's asking, what if a girl has precocious puberty and she's 4 years old? What then? He's like, yeah, you can marry her and consummate the marriage. And then, so he was saying if a girl gets precocious puberty, which is like a disorder, then yeah, it's okay if she's 4. And then Inspiring Philosophy goes, okay, what if she's 3? And Daniel goes, well, now this is biologically impossible. And IP goes, no, I have medical studies that show that girls have reached precocious puberty as young as 11 months. And that's when Daniel said, yeah, but the parents wouldn't give permission for that sort of thing. Like, well, they would if you've brainwashed them, you giant clown. You think you could dupe a parent into letting you have their 4-year-old, but you couldn't do that when an 11-month-old baby? If they're willing to give you their 4-year-old, they're probably so completely brainwashed that they give you their 11-month-old. Anyway, that's modern Dawa.
Just in support of Daniel Hakikaju, let me note that Ishaq Akintola, a professor of Islamic eschatology and director of Muslim Rights Concern in Nigeria, he said this: Islam has no age barrier in marriage, and Muslims have no apology for those who refuse to accept this. And Dr. Abd al-Hamid al-Ubaidi, an Iraqi Islamic scholar, he says there is no minimum marriage age for either men or women in Islamic law. The law in many countries permits girls to marry only from the age of 18. This is arbitrary legislation, not Islamic law. Dr. Saleh bin Fawzan in Saudi Arabia. He's an Islamic cleric who's a member of Saudi's highest Islamic council. Says there's no minimum age for marriage. Girls can be married even if they are in the cradle.
And this has become a popular thing among Muslims, saying that the age of 18 is just arbitrary. It's arbitrary in the sense that you could argue it a little bit in either way, but it's not arbitrary in the sense of that someone just picked one. It's when you look at medical problems that arise from both for the girl and for the child, then the younger they are, it's like a half bell curve situation where it starts off like tons and tons of dangers, and then as they start going through puberty and so on, and their hips widen and so on, the risks for the girl and for the baby decrease. And it's basically around the age of 17 and 19. That's when you get this massive low point as far as risks for the girl and for the baby. And so this conveniently sort of lined up, this sort of age period conveniently lined up with, this is when girls are kind of getting out of school in the West. And so how about having that as a good age? Because it's the longer you go before that, the increasingly more dangerous it gets. And so it's not arbitrary. In Islam, they say, oh, that's just arbitrary to say 18. We have no minimum age. And the result is they think it's okay to have sex with a 4 or 5-year-old. And they don't understand the problems. And there are massive problems with that.
So back to Abdi Abdullahi Harun in Utah. That's a Mormon name, by the way. He says that the girl, after he said, I want to make you my second wife, she says, I'm too young for that. And he said, Somali people don't care about age. Mm-hmm. And the girl, to her credit, replied, this is America.
Huh, smart girl. Gosh, she burned him up. He's given her his best Dawa script on why he can have sex with her, and she's just spitting hot fire there.
Yep. So he was jailed.
Loser.
He was booked into Salt Lake County Jail, charged with forcible sexual abuse and extortion of bribery, because actually what happened after that was that he told her not to tell her family about the whole incident. And he was still afraid, though, that she would. And so he contacted her. He told her that he would pay her $30,000. $30,000, David, if she would not go to the police and give him nude photos.
The nude photos. Robert, I was just about to say, hey, Abdullahi, whatever, if you want to make a proposal of marriage to me and give me $30,000 to keep it quiet, I'll do it right now. Send me the message. Send me the text. I won't share them with anyone. You send me the text. I threatened to get you to expose you. You send me $30,000. I'll keep my mouth shut. But now he's tossing in like nude pics and stuff. Anyway,
Yeah, it's bad. And also, he of course says, "You know what's coming now." He says that if she said anything to anyone about the conversation, he would kill her and hurt her family.
and Smart Girl had recorded it,
Yep. So
and then he's sending these as text. My goodness, what a dope!
he's in a spot of trouble, this guy.
What a dope!
Okay, so that's Utah. We also had an incident in Ireland. In Ireland, David. This is Father Paul Murphy. And Father Paul Murphy, he's an army chaplain. And he was at Renmore Barracks in Galway. And he was at the gate trying to check in. And this teen, according to the establishment media reports, a 16-year-old boy approached him and began to stab him. Actually, he ran out of his car and the kid chased him and was stabbing him. He didn't kill him, but he did injure him. He was hospitalized. And what's interesting is that the initial reports, I have here the Irish Times in front of me, and it says a 16-year-old boy has been arrested after the chaplain at an army barracks in Galway City was stabbed in what Gardaí are investigating as a suspected terrorist incident. But of course, they don't say what kind of terrorist. And it could be, it could be right-wing extremists.
IRA.
You never know. It could be anything. And so you go way down and it says, Gardaí, that's the Irish police, believe the youth had a grievance about the Irish Defence Force's presence in the Middle East. So that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs down. Do you hear that? And there's also the cops are saying he's radicalized online. Now, after a few days, they started to admit that the kid's a jihadi. He had Islamic State stuff all over his phone. He had what they call a radical Islamist mindset. Detective Sergeant McNulty said, as a result of evidence seized during the course of the investigation, it is believed that the accused holds a radical Islamist mindset. And so, anyway, it seems to me they're never going to be able to overcome this if they don't even dare to talk about it. And it came out days later, but it was really obvious from the beginning what was going on, and there was nothing about it in the papers.
No, you can't unless you come up with an alternate explanation that has nothing to do with jihad. And we've come to expect that he was upset about spilling his bowl of frosted Lucky Charms and went on decided to go on a killing spree.
Hearts, stars,
clovers, diamonds, horseshoes, spilled all over the floor.
So that must have been it. All right, so we got that going on in Ireland. Meanwhile, in France, this guy is a baker. You can actually tell he's a baker because he's standing there in front of baked goods. His name is Alexandre Dallery. And Alexandre Dallery used to make pork delicacies, pork products.
Smart. I like them. I like them already.
A bacon quiche was very popular at his bakery in Vénissieux. And he's no longer offering the bacon quiche, David. What happened was he had a couple of guys come in and ask for something good for breakfast. They just said, "What's good here? What do you have?" And so he served them the bacon quiche. Well, what do you know, David? They were Muslims.
Uh-oh.
Yes. They got extraordinarily angry. They said they were going to burn the place down because he served them bacon quiche. And,
which they ordered?
Well, yeah, because he didn't know. Apparently, they didn't know. He didn't know they were Muslims. They knew.
I have to say, one, I know they knew. How do I know they knew? And this was all part of a plot because they became enraged. If this had not been planned, and staged, then what would have happened is they would have said, "Oh, give us some food. We don't know what it is. Just give us some." They would have tasted it and they would have said, what is this? The most delicious thing we've ever tasted in our entire lives. And he would have said, "That's bacon." And they would have said, "We renounce Islam. We renounce
Yes.
Islam so that we can have more of this delicious thing." And that's what would have happened. So the fact that that didn't happen shows that it was all part of a plan.
Yes. And so Alexander Dallaire is now no longer selling pork in his bakery because the Muslims said, "You do this again, we're going to burn this place down." All right, so we had a story last week about a cross, I believe it was in France, being smashed. And here's another. This is a stone cross that stood in the town square in the town of La Tréport in France, going back to the 1600s, listed as a national monument since 1913, and now you can see it's been broken and is lying there in pieces at the town square. The mayor, who is a communist, Laurent Jacques, he said that it was just a bunch of drunken youths. He said, "We assume they hung around this monument. Perhaps over time it was also weakened. We can also make some assumptions, but they must have hung around it, and unfortunately, the monument gave way."
What do you mean must have? Why? How? I mean, how would he know? If it's just, in other words, if you just show up and this thing's broken, then how does he know it was drunken youths?
Well, that's a very good question. And apparently, he's got surveillance video of the nearby area, not of the cross itself. And that's where the drunken youths apparently passed. But the thing is that he's very anxious to deny that this has anything to do with Islam's contempt and hatred for the cross. But I would venture to say that there have likely been drunken youths in the town of La Tréport for quite some time in France.
Yeah.
And only now has this thing been broken.
Yeah. No shortage of drunken youths in France.
Yes. So why is it only today, only this week, that this stone cross dating from the 1600s suddenly gives way?
Yeah, that's like saying that would be like saying, "Hey, this thing got destroyed, and we suspect a bunch of cheese gobbling, smelly youngsters, young Frenchmen." And be like, "Wait a minute, you always had cheese gobbling, smelly youngsters there in France. So what's changed? What's changed in recent years that's different? Because you've always had the smelly, cheese gobbling youngsters there. I don't know."
Yeah, it's a mystery. What's different about France now from all the years before? Hard to say. David, back in New York City, our old hometown, this truck is driving around. This is the Hamas truck.
It's actually kind of a cool looking truck, except for all the Hamas stuff on it.
Yeah, what it's got is you can see the dripping blood motif and the bloody hands. And the bloody hands are a reference to a lynching of a couple of Israelis in Ramallah in the year 2000. They were driving and they got lost. And they ended up in Ramallah by mistake. They did not mean to go into Ramallah. But as soon as it became clear that they were Israelis, they were brutally murdered. And it's a very famous picture you've likely seen, David. The Palestinian Arabs who murdered them, one of them went to the window. He was in a second 2 or 3 story building, and he went up out in the window and showed his bloody hands at the window. And so the bloody hands on the truck are a triumphant reminiscence of the lynching of these Israelis. Then there's blood all over the truck, and he has escaped. He's actually run up over $4,000 in fines and fees and stuff, but he's got this fake license plate that says "Oh Gaza," and it's a fake plate, but it keeps them from being able to figure out who he is.
Hmm.
Although actually, the New York Post knows who he is, and he is a guy named Jose Letef. Uh, and it's unclear, at least from the New York Post story, why he uh, is so interested in doing this. But what he does is he drives around Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which is a heavily Jewish area, the international headquarters of the Lubavitcher Hasidim, and very heavily Jewish populated area. And he drives this Hamas truck with the Palestinian flag and terrorizes the neighborhood. And so, anyway, I thought, well, this seems to me to be kind of an easy way and an original way for him to strike terror in the enemies of Allah, as the Quran
Uh-huh.
directs.
Yeah. And yeah, it just sucks that he's got a fake license plate because there's no way police could ever find that guy. They can search and search and search all day long. They would never find that guy who's terrorizing the Jews in there.
In Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Hmm.
Never. Speaking of ineffectual police, I got a story out of Pakistan. And in Pakistan, you may recall, there was a very deadly incident last year where on allegations, unproven allegations of blasphemy on the part of a Christian, Muslims in Pakistan rampaged through a Christian area. This is a large scale rampage. They burned down 21 churches and 40 Christian homes. And yet, 90% of the suspects, this was in Jaranwala in Pakistan, in Punjab's Faisalabad district, 90% of the suspects are still at large a year
Hmm.
later. Now, do you think the Pakistani authorities just can't figure out where they are?
No, of course not. They know they understand the problem. And this is why you can never let this take root. I mean you can literally see it forming before your eyes in the UK. You see the exact same thing that is the situation in Pakistan is forming in the UK, where you end up with this two-tier justice system, and the authorities are terrified of doing anything against the Muslims, do it, but they'll do it against anyone else. And so it's the same situation. You see it fully flourishing, the system fully flourishing in places like Pakistan, where you can walk up, take a girl, do whatever you want to the girl, kill a person, just murder a person by mob and so on. And what are police going to do about it? If police take the side of the Christian or of someone else, you get a mob outside your police station burning your stuff to the ground and killing your family.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just have to not press too hard. You have to put on a little show for the international community, but at the end of the day, you don't want to mess with these guys.
Indeed. So, in Bangladesh, formerly East Pakistan, the other Muslim country in South Asia, the violence against Hindus continues. Several more Hindu temples have been attacked and destroyed. And what's interesting, David, is that now we are starting to see calls for the imposition of Sharia.
Shocker.
Yeah, let me get this guy up here. I know he's here. There he is. That is. Man, that guy's got the beard going. That
He's got the beard.
that's Muhyiddin Rabbani, and he is the vice president of Hifazat-e-Islam Bangladesh, that is Protector of Islam, an Islamic organization in Bangladesh, and he certainly has the beard for it.
He's
And
got the beard.
Muhyiddin Rabbani has called for Sharia in Bangladesh. And he said Islam was the basis of the creation of Pakistan. Pakistan was created for Islamic rule. We are Muslims and the majority in Bangladesh. We want this country should adhere to Islam. I don't know if he really said that in English or if that's just a poor translation, but anyway, we want this country should adhere to Islam. And our demand, which is genuine, When we gained freedom, Muslims claimed that this country would be governed by Islam, and we continue to seek the same. Now, then he said something interesting. He said, Islam even considers the rights of non-Muslims, which is not the case in any other religion. What do you think, David? Muhyiddin Rabbani says, Islam considers the rights of non-Muslims, which is not true in any other religion.
That's complete idiotic nonsense.
That's right. What does... by the way, why does he have a beard and no mustache?
Because that's what Muhammad ordered. He ordered people to pluck their mustaches. He has them, you know, you have to have people who really devoutly follow it. But Muhammad had his followers on a plucking schedule. And so they have to, like every 40 days you have to do this and so on. So they have to pluck their mustaches, armpit hairs, pubic hairs, all that stuff. And he had them on a grooming schedule, which is kind of, you know, kind of creepy actually, right? Like, hey, oh, you've just converted? Here's your schedule of when you need to pluck your pubic hairs. And it's funny if you go on to sites like Islam Q&A, where, you know, it's like a fatwa site. They're trying to, like, how do rules of Islam apply in modern context? And so they'll have to answer questions like, hey, can I wax my privates instead of plucking them one at a time? It's way more convenient not to say yes. You're you know, if you're waxing, you're basically plucking them all, you know, just really quickly and stuff. So they say yes, it's a good way to do it.
Okay, I remember from Islamicize Me.
Yep, Muhammad was a metrosexual.
All right. So anyway, Bangladesh, it's already starting in the village Chiksa of Tahirpur. The Muslims have banned music. No music at weddings. Huh?
Another shocker.
Yep. No music at weddings or birthdays or any other events. Anyone who plays music or any musical instrument will face legal action. Now, David, I tell you, over the years, this is another one of those things. Many, many times I have said Islamic law forbids music. And what do I get back? Oh, you just hate Muslims. You're an Islamophobe. Islam does not forbid music. You're making this up because you're so hateful and so on. And here it is. The Muslims are taking power, imposing Sharia in Bangladesh. And what are they doing? Forbidding music.
Yeah, that's really the history of the past 20 or so years, Robert. There's been people like us saying, this is what Islam teaches. The whole world says, no, you're liars. And then today, over and over again, we see them doing exactly what we said.
Yep. Sunan ibn Majah 40:20. Muhammad said, people among my nation will drink wine, calling it by another name, and musical instruments will be played for them, and singing girls. Allah will cause the earth to swallow them up, and will turn them into monkeys and pigs.
Mm-hmm.
Not good to be turned into monkeys and pigs. You know who that happened to.
Definitely don't want that.
Meanwhile, in India, there were some Hindus who were actually marching in protest of the violence against Hindus in Bangladesh.
Bunch of Islamophobes, man.
Yeah, what do you think happened to them?
I'm guessing nothing good.
Muslim mobs got together and started throwing stones at them.
Weird.
Yeah, you'd think that they would have said, we tolerate your disagreement because we're the religion of peace and tolerance.
Yeah, that's what they said. That's what they said would happen when we said, here's what's going to happen. And then they said, no, here's what would really happen.
Yes. I remember when Rivka Barry fled from her parents. She was a girl many years ago. That's where we first met, David. She fled from her parents because she had converted to Christianity, and her father said, if you have this Jesus within you, I will kill you. And so she left, and she was saying that she was being accused not only of apostasy, but of blasphemy, and that this was something that was a death penalty offense in Islam. And I remember Nihad Awad of the Council on American Islamic Relations wrote an article that it was actually started out, no, little Rivka, Islam does not forbid blasphemy. And, these guys just lie so brazenly and rely on the ignorance of the people who they are talking to.
I've always called it Islam's 99-1 rule. If you know 99% of the people are just going to mindlessly believe any nonsense you spout, then it's to your advantage to just keep lying. You can keep lying because if you're winning 99% of the people the entire time, then guess what? The 99% can drown out the 1% who know you're lying.
It's a good point. I don't think it's working right now, though. I think that it's reached a tipping point now.
Yeah, yeah. And so they have the method, which has been their go-to method forever, and now it's not working as well because they've got too many people exposing them, and so they're suffering the breakdown of their entire methodology because they have no plan B. There's nothing else. There's nothing else in Dawah and so on besides just lying about everything. And now, oh, the lies aren't working as much. Well, let's pile on more lies. Let's lie even more. Let's get more people lying. And yeah, we're getting to the point in history where we can expose the lies faster than they can spread the lies. Still a lot of work to do, ladies and gentlemen, but you gotta keep doing it.
That's an exact analogy with what's going on in the Islamic Republic of Iran. The people revolt, and then the regime replies with terror, because that's what the Quran prescribes. Strike terror in the enemies of Allah. That's what they always charge the people who are protesting with being. Enemies making war against Allah and His Messenger. And so, and then if that doesn't work, they just become more repressive and pour on more terror, because the Quran doesn't have a plan B. It just says strike terror in the enemies of Allah. That's it. So if you haven't terrorized them yet, keep at it. Bring more terror.
And guys, there is a silver lining here to this dark cloud. And that is, if Islam only has a couple of games that it knows how to play, right? If there are only a couple of plays in the Dawah playbook, and it's, hey, if you subjugate people, then you subjugate them. If that doesn't work, then here are all the lies you tell, and here's the script. If they have no plan B, and they don't have a plan B, then if they can't conquer you militarily, and if the lying no longer works, and they have no plan B, all we got to do is keep it up, expose the lies, make it to be completely ineffective, and they've lost.
There you go.
They've lost completely. They have nothing else to go to.
Here's an example of another common tactic. This is Ramgiri Maharaj, who is a Hindu leader in India. And I thought this is very interesting, David, because I looked around. I spent a morning a few days ago looking around all the stories about this incident, because Ramgiri Maharaj is accused of making an objectionable remark about Muhammad. And all the stories say something like that. He made an objectionable remark about Muhammad. And the Muslim community in India is enraged. People are demanding his arrest.
Hey, one second. I just wanted to make a prediction.
Yep.
I don't know, because it could be he could just be saying something horrible or something like this, or something made up. But 9 times out of 10, when I hear someone has made an objectionable remark about Muhammad, the person stated something that is factually true about Muhammad, and everyone flipped out about it.
That's right. Well, I suspect the same thing, but unfortunately, I don't know. Every last story about this did not say what he said. Nobody dares to repeat it. And it reminded me of the controversy.
The cartoons.
Exactly.
Exactly, same thought.
The cartoons were shown, they were lampooning Muhammad, and nobody would show them. Everybody immediately fell into a submissive mode. But what you're saying is exactly true. You think about Nupur Sharma, the spokesman for the BJP in India, and she had to go into hiding after an avalanche of death threats because she said that Aisha was a child when Muhammad married her, which is
the way she even said it was, they were insulting, and she said, do you want to go this route? Do you really want me to start talking about Muhammad and a 9-year-old girl, and then they have to destroy her over it?
Yep. All this time has gone by, and we have hardly gotten to any stupid infidels. What would be an episode of This Week in Jihad without stupid infidels?
May it never happen.
Okay, this guy, I know you know this guy. This is, what's his name here? Mursal Mohammed Saeed. And he is a Somali who moved to Germany.
Hmm.
And he moved in, he's 24 years old, but for whatever reason, he moved in with a 52-year-old German, Alex K. And Alex K. and Mursal Mohammed Saeed, apparently they had some kind of disagreement because Mursal Mohammed Saeed stabbed him 111 times with a knife. His intestines, the story says, were hanging out, spilling out because he had been stabbed so many times.
While he
And
was still alive, while the guy was still alive, his
yes,
intestines were spilling out.
and Mursal Mohammed Saeed, he ultimately beheaded Alex K. And he was, of course, put into a psychiatric hospital because that's what Germans do with jihadis. They don't admit there's a jihad, so they put him in the psych ward. And anyway, now there's a question of whether he will be deported. But Oliver Baumgartner, senior public prosecutor, says the prescribed overall assessment must include the seriousness of the crime, the dangerousness of the convicted person, and the likelihood that the convicted person will return to Germany. In this regard, it was necessary to take into account that the convicted person would be free in his home country and that there's no guarantee he will be treated properly. No guarantee he would be treated right in Somalia, so he gets to stay in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Smart. I know lots of inmates in the U.S. who've been in the U.S. prison system who would have loved to have been given those considerations. Okay.
Well, the thing is, I think that it's astonishing that Western governments all over Europe and North America, they take into consideration danger that the criminal might face rather than the increased danger to their own people. Because
yeah, think about what they're saying. We want this guy who stabbed a guy 111 times and his intestines spilled out, and then he chopped the guy's heads off. We want to keep him here in Germany because we don't want anything rough to happen to him in Somalia.
Yeah, and so who knows how many more people he's going to kill in Germany? Because they're not going to keep him in the psych hospital forever.
No,
and eventually he'll be walking around again. He'll get mad at another German. There you go.
and regardless of where he is, if he's in the mental hospital, guess what? You can stab someone to death in a mental hospital. You go to prison, you could stab someone to death there.
Indeed.
So someone else is going to get stabbed to death by this guy, and they're never going to know what to do about him because they don't want to send him to Somalia because he might get in trouble.
Yep, he might get hurt, the poor dear. Can't have that. All right, in Britain, there's never an end of stupid infidels in Britain. This is Philip Hoban. You can determine for yourself whether he himself is the stupid infidel or whether it is the officials that he's dealing with. Philip Hoban, he has been jailed for stirring up hatred at an anti-mass migration protest. And what happened was he was seen imitating the way Muslims pray in order to mock their religion. And he made slurs against Allah. Apparently, I would expect that included the chant that we were talking about last week. As you told me, it goes, Allah, Allah, who the F is Allah? And that is why he has been jailed. And so he actually said, I thought this was great. He said that he was not a racist, and of course, Islam is not a race, and so being opposed to the mass migration of Muslims into Britain and the possible Islamization and imposition of Sharia in Britain is not a racist thing. But anyway, he's being accused of being a racist. So he said he was not a racist, and that he was actually chanting about a man named Alan.
Smart. Smart.
But it didn't work.
Stick with that.
He's got 8 months in prison for insulting Allah. Now, I think insulting Allah, if that's a crime, then Britain's already
Lock us
getting
up.
Sharia. Well,
Yeah, if
yeah.
that's a crime, lock us up right now. Get it over with.
Meanwhile, in Britain, this is Haitham al-Haddad, and he is a preacher who has been accused of misogyny and homophobia, which I expect means he just said what Islam teaches about women and about homosexuals. And so the BBC just recently featured him to discuss the riots that we recently saw in Britain, even though he's been condemned by the government, by its counter extremism commission, because he is an extremist, as they say. And he prayed for victory on October 7th against Israel. He's pro-Hamas. And he gets on the BBC to talk about the riots while Phil Hoban goes to jail for mocking Allah. That's Britain today.
Yeah, no way this goes terribly wrong.
No way. What could
It's going to work
possibly
out.
go
It's all going
wrong?
to work out.
Huh.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, just think about the way things are going now, and think about what Britain is going to be like 5 or 10 years from now. Do you anticipate that it's going to be a really good place and they're going to get past all these struggles, or is it going to be a massive dystopic bloodbath place where everyone has to start moving to the U.S. because you can't stay in Great Britain anymore?
That's what's going to be, what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if the U.S. is any place to move to by then. But anyway, we talked about this guy last week, if I recall correctly, Wayne O'Rourke. I believe we did, but I might be thinking of another guy. But he's got 3 years in prison for posting material on social media that is allegedly supposed to stir up racial hatred, and it was opposed to mass migration and so on. And anyway, it's interesting that he got 3 years in prison, while this Muslim named Jibril Abdullah, who stormed a supermarket, a kosher supermarket, with a large blade, screaming about Palestine, he got 2 suspended sentences and alcohol treatment program.
It's a good deal.
So Wayne O'Rourke is going to prison for 3 years for some tweets, and Jibril Abdullah, who actually went into a kosher supermarket brandishing a knife, he's off scot-free.
And it's this weird situation where everyone in Great Britain is talking about the 2-tier policing, that they have completely different systems for dealing with British people and with Muslim migrants and so on. Just 2 completely different systems. On one, you can kind of do whatever you want, go around being violent, and they'll do nothing to you. And if you criticize what's going on in any way, they'll lock you up for 10 months, 20 months, and so on. And it's like the government isn't even denying it at this point. It's like this is like openly. We openly have this 2-tier system where we treat people completely differently based on whether you're Muslim or not.
Yep.
Which, I mean, isn't it amazing that, I mean, if you read the Muslim sources and said, what's the outcome? What's the outcome of these sources politically? You'd say a 2-tier system where Muslims are in one place and everyone else is treated completely differently. And when Muslims go to other countries, they can't like impose that. And ideally in Islam, you impose that. You conquer the people and then you impose this 2-tier system. In Western nations, they just whine and claim to be victims, and then Western nations say, "Hey, we'll give you the 2-tier system that you want to show that we're on your side and we're not these horrible people that you think." And they give them the exact same thing that you get under Sharia.
Yep. All right, this is what's happening in Britain as a result of all this. This is a story about a woman named Susu who is 24, and she is described in the story from The Spectator as a Syrian-Palestinian woman who arrived in Britain a few weeks ago in a rubber dinghy from Calais. And she says very interesting stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not Susu at all. Never mind. It's Shada. who is an Iranian student who is also seeking asylum in Britain. And she said that, she says this: I came here to escape radical Islam. My generation Z grew up in Iran with social media and Western values. Those are the values we want to live by. But you've got some people here who want to spread Sharia law. And she says that she doesn't feel safe in this country to which she has come to escape from Sharia.
Can you imagine the situation we're going to have in the near future? You're going to get another Iranian revolution where the people take over and topple the mullahs. And then simultaneously with that, you're going to get a bunch of Western places becoming Sharia compliant hellholes. You're going to end up with British people fleeing to Iran to escape Sharia.
Yep.
Pretty funny.
Yep.
Pretty
Yep.
funny situation.
I'm gonna move there. Got it all
Darn
set
right, I'll
up.
go there. If the people take over in Iran, I'll move there in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I saw that Russia, actually, this is a little off topic, but Russia is offering asylum to people who are fed up with the decadence of the West, and I thought that's a clever move. But I thought that I thought for a minute, well, maybe I'll go, and then I thought, what are you, crazy? You know, Putin has said anybody who desecrates the Quran will be sent to one of Russia's Islamic provinces to serve the sentence. So it's not any better in that regard. Anyway,
By the way, some of the people I've heard, some of the people who are being locked up over protests and so on, are the same thing's happening. They're sending them to prisons loaded up with Muslims.
oh sure, oh yeah, the British government wants these people dead. There's no doubt about it. You can just look at how they've treated Tommy Robinson over the years. All right, interesting thing came out of Barnard College, which is supposedly a very exclusive academic setting. Published a story saying that the original language of the land of Israel was Arabic. And when they started getting all kinds of ridicule for claiming this, they posted this on Twitter: we have deleted a recent post sharing a story about a student's summer internship in the interest of the student's safety. While Barnard values free speech, we will not tolerate the targeted harassment of a member of our community on our social media channels. David, is the original language of Israel, of the land of Israel, is it Arabic?
Yeah, I'd like to see the basis for that. Because you'd have to go back to what the Canaanites were speaking Arabic, because then the Canaanites, they're conquered by the Israelites. So you had the Canaanite language, then you had the Israelites, and then you had, of course, the Greeks. I mean, you get conquered, so they get conquered by the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Greeks and the Romans. As far as I can tell, when Arabs come in, that's when Muslims conquer them. That's when that would have been Arabic would have become a thing there.
Yeah, so that's starting in the 7th
century. That's 7th century.
About 2,500 or 3,000 years after the Hebrews.
So that's when it started. So that's when, according to them, that's when it started to exist. That's when Israel started to exist, the 7th century.
No wonder they were getting dragged on social media. But they made it out to be a harassment issue when probably it was a ridicule issue for their idiocy. Speaking of idiocy, one last story out of Germany. Very interesting story. It turns out a documentary has revealed that a lot of refugees from Afghanistan are going on vacation back to Afghanistan. Now, David, they supposedly fled Afghanistan in fear for their lives. And so why are they going back to this place where they could supposedly get killed? Could there have been another reason for them to have come to Germany?
Yeah, I don't know what the laws are there, but several countries have it as a rule. If you are saying that I have to leave this country because I'm in such danger there, it's in some countries it's a rule. You can't go back. You can't go back. If you're saying you're in so much danger that you have to leave that country, they're like, okay, you're agreeing that you can never go back to that country because you can't. you can't come here if you're saying you're in complete danger and it turns out to be a hoax and you just want to go back for vacations and so on. So apparently that is not the rule in Germany.
Nope, not anymore. So that brings us to the end of another exciting hour of Jihad. There is plenty more Jihad that we did not report. For all the stories, go see JihadWatch.org, and for all the sources of these stories that we did report. We will likely, all things being equal, be back next week with still more Jihad, because where Jihad is, there we are. Until then, pray, hope, and don't worry.